Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan El Rome.
In our top story, Tehran's top commander in Syria has been killed by a precision strike in Damascus. The targeted attack within the Iranian embassy compound leveled the military command center for Iranian forces in Syria, claiming the lives of IRGC and Quds Force commander Mohammad Reza Zahidi, his deputy, and 5 other members of the IRGC. Zahidi was believed to be the main liaison between Tehran and Hezbollah and was responsible for managing and directing rocket attacks on Israel. He also supervised the smuggling of precision weapons from Iran to Hezbollah in Lebanon and to Palestinian terror groups operating in Judea and Samaria. These advanced weapons pose an existential threat to the Jewish state. Zahidi was reportedly meeting with senior members of a Palestinian terror group at the time of the attack. This is the highest-level assassination of a member of Iran's top leadership since the hit on Quds Force chief Qasem Soleimani by U.S. forces in Baghdad in January of 2020. This targeted strike came just hours after an Iranian militia launched a drone attack against an Israeli naval base in Eilat. Yochanan has more on that story.
Yes, Rebecca, an Iranian terror group based in Iraq launched a weaponized drone strike on Israel's naval base in the southernmost city of Eilat. Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that a suspicious aerial target entered Israeli airspace from the east and then made impact in the Eilat Bay area. The Tehran-backed Islamic Resistance of Iraq claimed responsibility for the attack. No injuries were reported, but the IDF confirmed that a hangar on the military base was damaged. This is just the latest in a series of attempted strikes on the Red Sea resort city that have originated from Iranian-backed terror groups operating in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq.
Hamas is collapsing. The Israeli offense against the Iranian-backed terror group, which perpetrated the devastating October 7th attacks on Israel, is working, and there are signs of Hamas's imminent demise. According to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, senior members of Hamas have confessed that the group is collapsing from within. He said hundreds of terrorists have been captured and are admitting that the terror group is paying a very heavy price for its genocide inside of Israel. More than 500 Hamas terrorists were apprehended in operations at Shifa Hospital, and more than 200 terrorists, including senior Hamas leaders, have been killed in recent weeks.
The Hamas terror group has praised U.S. President Joe Biden for turning against the Jewish state. A senior Hamas official recently told Newsweek magazine the terror group recognizes the White House shift against Israel. The Biden administration has put enormous pressure on Israel to declare a ceasefire in Gaza before the IDF can fully dismantle the Hamas terrorist organization. Washington threatened to halt weapons shipments to Israel and even refrained from vetoing an anti-Israel resolution in the United Nations. Senior Hamas official Razi Hamad said there is no doubt there are clear changes in the Biden administration's policies toward Israel. He said Hamas believes that America can pressure Israel to stop the war. Israel remains adamant that it must defeat the Iranian-backed Hamas terror group. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that Israel will not surrender to Hamas's delusional demands and will continue to operate to achieve all war objectives. Those objectives include the release of all hostages, dismantling the military and governing capabilities of Hamas, and ensuring that Gaza will never pose a threat to Israel again.
The United Nations has released an interim report on the failures of UNRWA in Gaza, which Israel says is merely an attempt to conceal the world body's ties to terror. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency provides assistance only to Palestinians and works to perpetuate the refugee problem. It has a long history of corruption, overspending, and ties to Palestinian terror groups. Jerusalem has presented irrefutable evidence that at least 12 UNRWA employees actively participated in the October 7th massacre of 1,200 people inside of Israel, and that at least 1,500 UNRWA employees have ties to Palestinian terror groups. This bombshell report led several countries to cut funding to the defunct Palestinian aid organization and to call for it to be dismantled. In a desperate attempt to restore donor faith, the UN issued the report claiming that while UNRWA does need to address deficiencies, the world body has mechanisms in place to ensure neutrality. Israel's foreign ministry blasted the report, saying that the cosmetic reforms it proposes are meaningless. It accused the UN of attempting to cover up UNRWA's failures and ties to terror groups. Jerusalem called on donor countries not to allow taxpayers' money to flow through UNRWA, but rather to divert the funding to other humanitarian aid organizations in Gaza.
The Palestinian Authority continues to advance unilateral moves to gain full membership in the United Nations. The terror-supporting Palestinian government announced that it requested the UN Security Council to vote on a motion recognizing the PA as a member of the world body, a move that both Israel and the United States have opposed. The PA currently holds permanent observer status. America has vetoed previous Palestinian attempts to gain membership, but now the PA views the Biden administration's recent moves against Israel as an opportunity to advance its cause at the UN and achieve recognition while continuing to pursue its terror war against Israel.
The Israeli Knesset has voted to approve a law that would allow it to ban foreign news networks that pose a threat to national security. The so-called AlJazer law gives the Prime Minister and Communications Minister the power to temporarily shutter foreign news networks from operating in Israel if it is believed that they are harming state security. Israeli officials have accused AlJazer and other Arabic-language news sources of endangering IDF troops by revealing their positions. Communications Minister Shlomo Karhi said there is proof that AlJazer is assisting the enemy, broadcasting propaganda in the service of Hamas to viewers around the world, and even passing sensitive information to the enemy. Karhi announced that the Qatari-funded news network would be shut down, saying that there will not be freedom of expression for Hamas mouthpieces in Israel.
The Islamic State terror group has called for the massacre of Christians and Jews during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. According to the British Mirror news outlet, the spokesman for ISIS recently used the Telegram platform to encourage lone wolf terrorists to target Christians and Jews, especially in the United States, Europe, and Israel, during Ramadan.
The Palestinian Authority, led by Fatah chief Mahmoud Abbas, has declared the formation of a new government. The United States pressured the PA to restructure so that it can take control of the Gaza Strip after the war. Despite claiming to have reformed, the same anti-Jewish hatred remains consistent within the Palestinian leadership, which still refuses to condemn the October 7th genocide in Israel. Many of the new cabinet members actively support and incite terror and refer to Jews as apes and pigs. A survey conducted by the Palestinian Center for Survey and Policy Research reflects that Hamas's popularity rose after the October 7th massacre. Initial polling showed that 3 in 4 Palestinians supported the genocide in Israel. The United States has expressed optimism in working with the so-called New Palestinian Authority, but Israel believes that this is the same government advancing the same murderous ideology.
The Associated Press has been honored with a prestigious award by Pictures of the Year for a photograph taken by an Arab journalist who infiltrated Israel on October 7th. The image, taken by AP freelance photographer Ali Mahmoud, shows the half-naked and brutalized body of 20-year-old Shani Luke in the back of a pickup truck surrounded by Hamas fighters. The so-called journalist entered the Jewish state along with thousands of Hamas terrorists to document their atrocities. He has been accused of having advanced knowledge of the attacks. Michal Kotler-Wunsch, Israel's special envoy for combating anti-Semitism, condemned the prize as symbolizing the normalization of anti-Semitic hate.
An Israeli high school student discovered an ancient oil lamp while hiking with his class in the Arava Desert. 16-year-old Jonathan Frankel was on a school trip when he stumbled across the 1,600-year-old vessel near an old Roman fortress. Frankel and his teacher immediately notified the Israel Antiquities Authority, who praised the find and confirmed that it is identical to one discovered at the site 90 years ago. Dr. Tali Eriksson-Gini from the IAA explained that between the 4th and 6th centuries, a trade route was established between the Nabatean towns of Mashmit and the copper mines of the biblical city of Punon. Roman soldiers constructed a series of forts along the road where garrisons would guard the valuable shipments of copper. Dozens of artifacts have been discovered along this route, proving its importance in ancient times.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Adi Shragai. She's the director of Preserving the Eternal. Adi, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell our viewers a little about what is Preserving the Eternal.
We are an organization whose goal is to preserve, protect, and develop heritage sites in Judea and Samaria. We established the organization a few years ago after we realized that heritage sites in Judea and Samaria are in very bad shape. People were just hiking and traveling along sites in Judea and Samaria and realized that every single site has been damaged or robbed. And so to get a more clear picture and realistic picture of what is happening in these sites, we conducted the National Heritage Survey, in which we surveyed hundreds of heritage sites in Judea and Samaria in order to check their preservation state. And unfortunately, the results were horrible, and 80% of these sites were severely damaged. And so we realized there is really a major issue here that needs to be dealt with.
I've seen this myself. I travel throughout Judea and Samaria. It's, the biblical heartland of Israel. And a lot of times you see these beautiful tapestries that have been ripped out, that have been broken. And we've been explained that this is a specific targeted attack by the Palestinian Authority. They're doing this on purpose. Why are they doing this?
Okay, so the Palestinian Authority has an organized plan of destroying heritage sites because they simply want us and the world to forget the Jewish history. They want to deny our connection to this land. And so they go and they settle and build houses directly on heritage sites. They obviously rob them. But robbing is actually the smaller percent of the damage that happens to the site. Most of it is development and agriculture.
My cousin Ari and I were on a trip, and he said that this is cultural genocide, that they're really trying to take away our own heritage, where we come from, the proof that we existed in the past. Why isn't the government doing more to stop this?
So actually, in the past year, with our help, the government has initiated a national heritage emergency plan in which they had a big budget for preserving and protecting those heritage sites. And so I hope there will be a positive change soon.
It seems like the Palestinian Authority, their strategy is working. Just recently, the international community is recognizing Jericho as a Palestinian heritage site. I mean, anyone who opens the Bible knows the story of Jericho and how Joshua took it. There were no Palestinians back then, yet somehow it's a Palestinian heritage site. Can you talk about that?
So indeed, there is no connection between the Palestinians and Jericho. The fact that UNESCO declared Jericho as a Palestinian heritage site is, that's just a joke. The Palestinians did not even exist during these times. And giving them this prize, the Palestinian Authority, who in one hand, destroys heritage sites all over Judea and Samaria, and then on the other hand, they're giving them this prize of getting a World Heritage Site. It's just absurd.
What can be done to get more information out about this to the international community? I think that a lot of people would be outraged, not just pro-Israel supporters, but people who care about archaeology and history. You look at Joseph's tomb, it's being destroyed all the time. Everyone knows Joseph from the Bible. Everyone wants to be able to see that someday. How can we get the message out?
Except for the Palestinian Authority. Everybody wants these sites, no matter which periods they're from, to be preserved and kept. I hope that archaeologists come and excavate these sites, although there is a problem with that. There's a boycott on archaeologists who want to excavate, on Israeli archaeologists who want to excavate in Judea and Samaria, and some journals won't publish their articles. And so even though this is the heart of the land of the Bible, the most important sites are in there, but archaeologists don't want to excavate there.
I feel like this is more than just a PA. This seems like all of our enemies come together for a political plot. You see it in the UN, you see with other actors, there's a boycott on archaeologists. After October 7th, when we realized that in this terrible genocide that the Hamas is trying to wipe us out, isn't it more important now for us to realize that it's happening on all fronts in the north, in Judea and Samaria? And one of the things they're trying to do is wipe out our culture. How can Israelis understand this is happening and get involved with it?
So actually, since October 7th, there's been a major increase in the destruction of sites. And we really don't want to wake up the day after the war and realize that our history has been completely erased and destroyed. And so I think that the best way for each and every one of us to preserve these sites is just go visit them. In sites that people are there, people come and visit, they are way more protected than other sites that people don't go to.
Most of our viewers are Bible-believing Christians, and they believe in Judeo-Christian heritage. They believe in the Bible. And so these places are essential to them. How can they help with preserving these locations in Judea and Samaria?
So I think the most important goal would be just to spread out the word, raise the awareness on how bad the situation of the sites are.
Adi, there are literally tens of millions of people watching the show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Judea and Samaria is the heart of the land of the Bible. All the major sites, all the major events that took place in the Bible are in there. And unfortunately, this history is being destroyed. And so we need to spread out the word. We need to raise awareness onto how bad the situation is, and come visit.
Thank you, Adi, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
In a region marred by conflict and division, the concept of the Cyrus Accords is emerging as a beacon of hope for cooperation and stability between Israel and Iran. While many view these two nations as enemies, there are individuals in each country who believe just the opposite. The Cyrus Accords was the brainchild of former U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates and Lynn Hordakovsky, a former senior advisor and U.S. Special Representative. The peace initiative is not meant to take decades to build. Rather, it was written with the hopes of coming to fruition in the near future, immediately after the anticipated fall of Iran's autocratic Islamic regime. This plan for peace would allow Israelis and Iranians to restore what was once a historic cooperation. Iran and Israel have roots that are older than even their modern names. Once upon a time, Iran was the Kingdom of Persia, and the people of Israel lived in what was called the Kingdom of Judea. The Jewish people were exiled from their homeland and violently taken away into Babylon, which was a province of the Persian kingdom at that time. Persia's ancient ruler, Cyrus the Great, made history in 538 before the Common Era when he liberated the people of Israel from Babylonian captivity and allowed them to return to their homeland. He went so far as to encourage them to rebuild their holy temple, which the Babylonians had previously destroyed. Taking a page from King Cyrus, today's Cyrus Accords are meant to restore what previously had been a friendly and supportive relationship between Iran and Israel throughout the millennia. In 1948, Iran became the second Muslim-majority country to recognize Israel as a nation. The countries cooperated diplomatically and even militarily. Early into Israel's statehood, the Mossad intelligence agency trained members of Iran's Savak security forces and continued to work together on military and security cooperation, though this was not widely known by the public. When the radical Islamic movement violently took power in 1979, they severed ties with Israel and forced their 38 million Iranian citizens to submit to strict Sharia religious law. Reza Pahlavi, the son of the last Shah of Iran, broke barriers when the exiled crown prince made a shocking trip to Israel in April of 2023. Pahlavi's father was overthrown by the Islamic extremist in 1979. The whole family was exiled to Egypt. Today, the crown prince lives in the United States and cannot go back to Iran while it is run by an evil dictatorship. Pahlavi surprised a worldwide audience by visiting the Western Wall in the old city of Jerusalem, and even wearing a Jewish religious head covering called a kippah.
Iranians and Israelis see how important it will be for our future to be our strategic partners, to work together to address many issues.
Israel's Minister of Intelligence, Gila Gamliel, is spearheading the Israel-Iran Initiative for Peace from the Holy Land. Today, there are 88 million Iranians, and even though the government routinely calls on citizens to hate Israel, more and more of the population are taking a different direction. They refuse to step on the Israeli flag or burn the Star of David, and many say they are seeing the truth about Israel despite all of the lies and hatred spread by the Ayatollah's fanatic regime. Israel and the United States have nothing to do with Iranian civil unrest. Nevertheless, its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, routinely blames Washington and Jerusalem, but the locals are no longer buying it. Today, Iranians are boldly standing up. Thousands of civilians have repeatedly taken to the streets to protest the harsh restrictions imposed by Islamic clerics. Sadly, Iran's current leadership is now working harder than ever to drive wedges into the Middle East. The Cyrus Accord is unique for its bottom-up approach. Most accords are penned between leaders for business or security reasons. The Cyrus Accord comes from the people's desire to work together and focus on tolerance and respect across cultural barriers. The entire region can benefit from a sense of safety, security, and even technological advancement with collaboration between world powers like Iran and Israel. But sustainable change requires patience and a commitment to the vision of a more peaceful and prosperous Middle East. With just a little more support for the Cyrus Accords, the entire world might benefit from an unexpected but revolutionary peace agreement. Up next, the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Today we are in Moshav Tramim, which is close to Sderot. I am here with a group of 23 people from all around the world that have decided to come, especially during this time, to stand with Israel and show it in like a practical way. So during the past about 10 days, we have renovated bomb shelters, we have cooked meals for the families of the hostages. We've also visited different places. We've done many different things, and today we're harvesting lemons.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
when October 7th happened, we took it personally. You know, we were heartbroken, and we were praying a lot about it, and I wanted to do something more than just pray. I wanted to put my prayers into action.
In this hard time, if we don't come to Israel or stand up for Israel, when should we do it? I have friends living down at the border, so it affected me very much. Not only as a Christian, but as a human being. I know one of them is hostage in Gaza.
This is a job for me. I like to work with my hands, and I like to work with people, so I give myself to a volunteer. I see Jewish people who still go on. They have a lot of pain in their heart, but they still go on, and they're so happy that we are here to help them.
Look at history. If we remain silenced, we'll be next. You know, and the problem is we already see this lesson from history. When the Christian church was silent, the Holocaust happened. Our stance needs to be bolder, our light needs to shine brighter, and we need to advocate for truth.
We have to come here, support the people, and make them understand that they are not alone. And when we come back to our home countries, we have more information, more strength to tell our co-workers, our friends, family members, neighbors about what we have seen here.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, care for evacuees with food, shelter, clothing, and trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.